Well, with me are Chris Leslie, Labour's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and John Caudwell, who's an entrepreneur and founder of Phones for You. And we're also joined from Westminster by the Financial Secretary to the Treasury, the Conservative MP, Sajid Javid. John Caudwell first. You heard in Faisal's piece there that the British gas boss has decided to forego his bonus. Pretty canny move, isn't it?
It is. On the one hand, it's his responsibility as a corporate chief executive to maximise the profits. On the other hand, of course, people are hurting. The cost of living is going up way in excess of pay rises. Energy is going up phenomenally. And so I think it's quite a smart and quite an honourable thing to do, actually.
Well, Sajid Javid, do you want more energy bosses and other bosses, indeed, to follow the British gas boss lead?
Well, that's a decision for bosses, but it is welcome news. But the important thing is that we keep working hard to find ways to reduce bills. We do have some answer to that, such as legislating to put people on the lowest tariff and having an annual competition test, as well as looking at some of the levies. And these are practical solutions. The only thing Labour's come up with at the moment is a price con.
Oh, but you haven't nailed it down, have you, as we just heard from Gary there?
Well, we're still working on some issues, and when we've got the autumn statement coming up over the next few weeks in December, we will be able to look at what other action we can announce at the time. But some action we've already taken. But something we're also determined to do is not to come up with new charges that will push energy prices up, such as the one Labour supports, which is a decarbonisation commitment, which will push up energy bills by £125 for each person each year.
OK, can you promise then that in the autumn statement that will herald a reduction in people's bills?
I'm not going to promise anything about the autumn statement right here and now. We'll have to see what's in it when it comes out. But what I can promise is that we take cost of living challenges very seriously. Part of dealing with cost of living is having an economic policy that is creating growth and creating jobs. And what we do believe is that you need a successful economic policy to deal with that, unlike Labour that thinks you can just come up with gimmicks.
Well, Chris Leslie, you've come up with another what Sajid Javid would call a gimmick today, tax breaks to encourage firms to pay the living wage. The problem is that there's some authoritative estimates that 300,000 people would lose their jobs if that was implemented.
Well, I don't believe that would be the case. In fact, what we have to do is take action, not just the words, the lethargy that we've seen from the minister there, to deal with the low-pay emergency that we have in this country. I mean, it's not just the slowest...
What about that 300... I mean, this is an authoritative estimate. The Resolution Foundation and the IPPR say that 300,000 people would lose their jobs.
I think that if we can do more to help ensure that people get a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, that would be widely received. And in fact, at the CBI today, there's been quite a warm reception for the notion that we should give incentives to businesses to try and do better. For example, under our plan, what we want to do is allow some of those tax and national insurance benefits that might be saved by the Exchequer to be returned to businesses as an incentive to encourage them to pay more. That living wage really matters because a fifth of the country, a fifth of the working people don't get paid.
I just want to ask John Caudwell here. You've sold your Phones for You business now, but did you pay your employees a living wage? Could you afford to do that?
There was no such thing as living wage then. It was quite some time ago.
It's whatever you say it is.
But what I always try to do is pay a very competitive wage that motivated people to perform and to want to stay with the business. In any business, the cost of attrition, losing your employees, is huge. And I think, if employers can afford to pay the living wage, it's quite a smart thing to do, but they've got to have the whole package that goes with that, the motivation of the people, the career progression, not just a minimum wage.
I read that you also pay the highest income tax in Britain, so presumably you'd agree with the Sainsbury's chief executive who says that tax is a moral issue for business, would you?
Absolutely, more so than ever in this day and age where we've got such huge national debt. Britain is in a real hole, as a lot of other countries are, and we need to all get out of it together. And I don't think we can get out of it if corporates are taking away their profitability and hiding it in foreign territories. It's their legal right to do so, but I absolutely agree with Justin King that it's immoral.
Sajid Javid, let's face it, we wouldn't be talking about this now, and Sam Laidlaw, the British gas boss, would not be foregoing his bonus were it not for the fact that Ed Miliband pledged to freeze energy prices.
Well, I don't think that's right at all. And interestingly there, you had Chris said that the CBI gave this proposal a warm reception. I think what the head of the CBI actually said was that Labour's policies make the hair stand up on the back of his neck. Now, if Chris thinks that's a warm reception, I hate to think what he thinks a cold reception actually is. The reality
the fact is that Labour's set the agenda here, and you're running to catch up now with the autumn statement, aren't you?
No, not at all. I mean, what we're doing is that we're setting out our economic policy. We're dealing with Labour's recession, which was the deepest in living memory. It's bringing about growth. There's a lot more to do, but the economy is creating jobs. And the best way for people to raise their income, raise their living standards, is also to make sure we have an economy that's growing jobs.
He doesn't, look, Cathy, he doesn't understand that, I think, for the first generation for a long time, this link between a growing economy and family household finances has been severed, because for most people, life is getting a lot harder and they do not feel better off. And Sajid thinks that the cost of living crisis isn't part of the economic policy. It's vitally part of our economy.
I can agree with part of that point, but the simple fact is that we massively overspent during Labour's time.
To rescue the banks,
And
though.
So the prospect of...
not to rescue the banks.
Of course
no.
we had to
To buy votes. To buy votes. Labour bought votes with the national balance sheet and left a dreadful challenge for Tories. And I'm not here to preach politics at all. It's the way I see it. The Tory party inherited a dreadful financial situation.
And as a Tory donor yourself, would the hair stand up on the back of your neck if Ed Miliband? Do you help Bill Cash's re-election campaign?
I helped Bill Cash. That was a European issue.
Okay, fair enough. But does the prospect of an Ed Miliband premiership make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up?
Do you know, most politicians make the hairs on the back of my head stand up. If you show me a politician that really, truly believes in trying to make Britain right, rather than buying votes for the next election,
we've got to try
that'll be the politician that I support.
We've got to try.
And I suspect tonight hasn't changed your views on that.
Not at all.
Sajid Javid, John Caudwell, Chris Leslie, thank you very much for joining me.